Well, we've been very fortunate at Classic 4x4 Podcast to have some epic fabricators and builders in past seasons and even this season too. But in season one, we had, Charlie Pitcher, who a lot of you know was one of our launch episodes, who talked about how he builds those absolutely insane classic Dodge pickups. We had Dan Hayes from Binder Boneyard, who builds, beautiful, beautiful Scouts. But today we have the pleasure of having an icon on the Classic 4x4 Podcast. What I would consider the most iconic designer, fabricator, and builder out there. Today joining us is Rob Ida. What's up, Rob?
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So for those of you that don't know Rob, Rob is actually a hot rod builder. We're going to, and right about now, our guests are probably scratching their heads saying, well, why is the Classic 4x4 Podcast have a iconic hot rod builder on? And the reason is a lot of people don't realize that hot rods and classic four-wheel drives share a lot of the same roots. And those roots really revolve around the Willys Overland brand. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later in the podcast. But if you don't follow Rob on the social channels and Instagram, you got to check out his builds. It's Rob_Ida. Also, his shop, Rob Ida Concepts, basically builds some of the most amazing hot rods ever to have rubber hit the ground. And you can check them out online. That's robidaconcepts.com. And also, while you're adding some different channels, or I should say accounts to your Instagram, add Asbury Park Circuit on there too. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. So let's get started. And Rob, I was doing a little research for this podcast today, and I came to learn that your family actually owned a Tucker dealership at one point.
It's true, yeah. In 1947, my grandfather, he kind of read about this new car that was coming out, this new idea. And you almost have to think of like Tesla, but back then, right? So it was a car that was completely different. Manufacturing was different. The ideas for marketing the car was different. The car itself had all these new advancements. And so Preston Tucker designed this car. It was a rear engine sedan, performance minded, safety minded, and also very stylish. And was going to bring this car to market. And he was doing this very, very quickly. So for him to develop a car, he had to develop not only a prototype, but then a factory in which to produce the car. He needed to generate money quickly. So what he did was he signed up dealerships before there was actually a car to sell. So my grandfather was one of these dealers. He bought a dealership in Yonkers, New York, and he had a storefront, and he had signage, and he had accessories like luggage and ashtrays and seat covers and all the things that the accessory program for Tucker had in mind, but no cars. And what they did was they sent a couple of prototype cars to make appearances at these dealerships. So they weren't actually for sale, but they were there for people to see. So he had this dealership, and I think that he was officially open for business for only a couple of days. And he wrote up a lot of orders, things that were looking really good for the sales of the Tucker cars. But unfortunately, Tucker got tangled up in some lawsuits and investigations. And basically, by the time he fought his way out of that stuff, he was bankrupt. There was just not enough money to fight the fight and build a car in a short amount of time. So it killed the car factory. And with that, the government seized all the assets from Tucker and put them up on the auction block. And so my grandfather went to that auction in Chicago where they were making the cars. And unfortunately, just didn't have enough money to even buy a Tucker back then, because they were always collectible. So they made 50 of these cars. And one of them I have here in my shop now. It's being restored. And it was actually owned by Preston Tucker himself. So after the factory was closed and the government was auctioning off the assets, including the cars, Preston Tucker himself went to this auction and purchased this car, which I have in my shop now that we're restoring. So that's kind of how the Ida family got involved, not only in Tuckers, but in cars. That was the first entry to the car world for us, car industry. And so after the Tucker thing closed up, then, we kind of stayed in the car industry in a variety of ways over the years.
That's neat. So, a lot of people say that they have, oil and gas running through their veins, that old adage, but like you just have it ingrained in your DNA at this point. So
unfortunately, I don't know anything else, so I have to make that work.
But you have a cool story. So, how do you go from that cool family heritage, right? That unique story to literally opening up and having the premier or one of the premier, hot rod shops in the country, Rob Ida Concepts? Like, connect us from, being a little kid with this passion to, wow, I have this amazing, fully staffed, design, fabricate, build shop.
Well, it's a slow evolution, right? So none of it happened overnight. And it kind of continued on since the Tucker dealership. So my grandfather had the dealership in Yonkers. And then after it closed up, he opened up a general repair shop in Brooklyn. And that's where he lived. And that's where my father was raised. And he worked with him in the repair shop. So now they have this corner gas station in Brooklyn. And both of them were pretty creative guys. So they started making trailers, almost like U-Haul or Ryder, where you can rent this trailer. And so they would build their own trailers, have them for rent. And, they kind of ran a business repairing cars, making these trailers. But in the back, my father was building a hot rod gasser, and this being one of them here, this Austin Healey that I'm sitting next to. So he was in the gasser wars, and which, as we know, was a big Willys thing, right? So Willys, as 4-wheel drive trucks, I know them as race cars. 33 to 41 Willys gassers were the hottest thing. So my father built one in 1967. I think it was 1966 or 7 that he built his Willys gasser, and he ran double B gas, supercharged. Ran over here at Englishtown and tracks, local tracks, and he was real successful with that. He had a supercharged 409, and we believe it was the world's fastest 409 at the time. And so from there, he just kind of always had either a race car or a hot rod going on in his life. And moved to New Jersey, got out of Brooklyn, moved to New Jersey. He opened up a repair shop here where I grew up. I grew up kind of, that was my playground. I wasn't on Little League. I went and hung out in the shop. So where he was fixing cars during the day to earn a living, at night we would be building a hot rod as a hobby. And, that's how we spent our weekends together. And that's how we spent our nights on these father and son projects that we would build. And when I was 7 years old, I remember opening up a scrapbook. And I remember like it was yesterday. I'm 50 now. And I remember like it was yesterday opening the scrapbook and seeing actually this car, this Austin Healey. And there was a picture of it doing a wheel stand, and it's got a blown Hemi hanging out of the hood, and the car's doing a wheel stand. And the moment I saw that, I realized I don't care about anything else other than hot rods. That's the only thing I cared about. Cars and hot rods. That's the only thing I wanted to know about. So we just kind of got an education of building cars and keeping up with new technology. We love old gassers, we love old vintage hot rods, but we also love the most modern things too. So we try to keep our eyes open, across the whole platform of what's going on out there. And in 1990, when I was graduating high school, there was a decision to be made. What am I going to do now? Am I going to go get a real job, or am I going to keep doing the hot rod thing? And so I kept doing the hot rod thing, and I so far haven't had to get a real job. So that's been how we've been doing it together for all these years. And so 3 generations, we figure, is kind of what brought us to this point.
Now, is your shop in the same place where your dad's shop was?
It's just down the street from where the repair shop was when I grew up. Yeah, it's not far, half a mile.
Okay. That's pretty cool. And is your dad still active in the shop or?
Yeah, he is. He's 77 and he's still as cool as ever and as active as ever. He still has hot rods. And right now he's all caught up in his new car. He's got the new Ford GT and he takes back to the track and he races that car. And so, yeah, he's super involved and as cool as ever.
But day to day deal with the customers, the clients, their custom and bespoke builds. That's your world, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm up to these days. He picks and chooses a couple of projects that he wants to get involved in here and there. But he likes to enjoy his time doing, things that are all automotive related, but more for him.
That's awesome. Hey, don't we all wish we can get to that point in our lives where we just do what we want to do? That's it, right?
Yeah, he's got it figured out. Yep.
That's cool. So, you've done, some 4-wheel drive projects, which I'm sure people are surprised to even hear that. But before we even get into that, there are, the hot rod culture and classic 4x4 culture really sprouted from the same roots, which was Willys Overland, right? Yeah. We all think of Willys Overland being at the time, the largest mass producer of 4x4 vehicles, bringing 4x4s really to the civilian world with the CJs. But a lot of people don't realize that Willys made cars, and those cars post-war became, or I should say post-World War II, became like the platforms for some of them, really for what hot rod culture came out of. So, kind of talk to us about those early Willys. How did they really become, I guess, the centerpiece of hot rod culture for hot rod builders? And that's one of the things you probably build the most of still to this day, right? Yeah.
Well, as I said, I grew up on them. So that is my favorite vehicle. Like to me, a Willys Pickup, a 41 Willys Pickup is the ultimate vehicle for me. Nobody could fit in them. They don't make any sense any other way, but I just love the way they look because that's what I grew up on. But before Willys made these 33 to 41 coupes that people love to build hot rods out of or race cars out of, they were in the luxury car market. So Willys Knight was making these big luxury expensive cars. And at the time, there was lots of competition. There were a lot of car manufacturers making cars in that market. So they started to fall off a bit and they realized that maybe the luxury car market isn't really where they should be. They should develop an inexpensive car. So they come out with the 33 Willys Coupe and sedan. It was called the Model 77. It had a flathead 4-cylinder in it. And it was really little, tiny, lightweight car, crude, kind of the quality, build quality of like a Jeep, and it was a passenger car, but it was rough, they were thin and light and simple. So after they hit the junkyards and nobody cared about them, sometime in the 60s, maybe it was Stonewoods and Cook or Big John Masmanian or one of those guys realized that this is a cool car to race because it's so small. It's much smaller than a Ford or a Chevy, very light. And you could put a gigantic engine in there and have a little car to drag down the track. So all of a sudden, they became the hottest thing in the world. And my father remembers, he's told me the story about when he was looking for one. And all of a sudden, everybody had to have a Willys. And it was like overnight. And my grandfather was like, wait a minute, a Willys, like, nobody wants that. Like, that's garbage. We threw all those cars away. Nobody wants that. And you're looking for that. So anyway, they went and they found one and they were able to build a competitive drag race car out of junkyard parts. It was a junkyard chassis from the 30s and 40s with simple upgrades and a gigantic motor. And it was like a very competitive race car. And before funny cars were the thing, these were like the fastest and most exciting drag race cars to watch. And it was kind of short lived. And then they were replaced by better cars that were lower, more purpose built. But for some reason, the look of that gasser, that Willys gasser, just stuck in everybody's mind. And it's just such a classic. And I don't think they'll ever become, unpopular because now they're collectible and they're loved. People are recreating them. People are restoring old famous race cars. And you almost can't find a stock one. I had a beautiful stock '42 Willys Coupe a couple of years ago. It was like an untouched, perfect car. And I enjoyed having it for a year or two because it was a novelty to see one that doesn't have a blown Hemi in it. But after a while, I realized, like, what else am I going to do with this thing? I'm putting around town with, these crappy brakes and no power. So eventually I sold it to another collector who's, got it in his showroom. But yeah, I mean, that's what these cars are for me, is they're just an icon. And then like in the later years, they became a popular street route as well. So that meant low and air conditioning and fuel injected engines and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, they're that name it's not a household name, right? A lot of people don't know what Willys is, but car people do for so many reasons, whether it's a truck or a Jeep or a hot rod.
And that's what people know them as, is when you talk about Willys, they think, oh, Willys Overland. Like, the Jeepsters and all that. And that's what people think of. They don't think of the sedans and the coupes that really were the core of hot rodders and that culture. That's super neat. I forgot to ask you, actually, the most important question that I ask everybody that comes on the Classic 4x4 podcast, which is, what was your first car?
Well, it's funny you ask, because it is a Willys. So when I was 7 years old, my father and I decided, okay, we want to build a Willys. And we had a friend who had a Willys Pickup laying out in a field. It was an old gasser. And it was one of these things that he was going to get to one day. And it's not for sale. And we're still great friends. And I was 7 years old at the time. It was shortly after I saw the scrapbook with this Healy in there, decided this is what we have to have. So I begged him to sell it to us. And he said, all right, I'm going to sell it to you because you guys are going to build it, and it'll be a cool father and son project. So he did. He sold it to us, and we built it together. And of course, I was 7 years old, so I didn't do a lot of actual hands-on. I did what I could, and I learned a lot. And we built the truck, and it was just such an experience. And, if anybody ever thinks that taking on a project like that is a waste of time, I beg to differ, because taking on a project like that is something that can stick with you for a lifetime. And if you share it with someone else, it really is an amazing thing. And you can learn so much, and it's very rewarding. Building a car is not easy. There's, it's 90% defeat, but that 10% win is what we live for, And so we got through all that stuff, and then we built another one. Now I was going to build my own car. So I was around 11 years old, and I was given the opportunity to put together the 65 Pontiac. So I started to put that together, and I made it run. I put the engine together myself. I was 11, so I needed help lifting up the cylinder heads and stuff like that. But I was able to work it out, and I got the thing to run. And sold that, and eventually bought my own Willys Pickup. I was 14, and started with a roof and a back wall of a cab. So no chassis, no doors, no door post, no dashboard, nothing. It was the rooftop and the back wall of the cab is all there was. So from that was my real education on how to do everything that you need to do to build a car. So I pieced together other sections of a sedan cab, and I made a cab out of these parts. I went to the junkyard, and I got a Toyota pickup from the 80s. And I took the body off the chassis, took the engine out, and I used the frame rails from this Toyota pickup truck under the cab of this Willys Pickup. And I saved up my money. And that was another part of the learning process. I learned how to earn money while I'm building this truck. So that meant doing jobs on other cars or flipping cars or whatever it took to earn some money, so I could buy the next piece. And I remember how much every part cost on that first build, because when you're working from the age of 14 to the age of 17, every penny matters. And I can tell you how much every nut and bolt cost on that thing. So I got this truck together between the age of 14 and 17. New Jersey, you get your driver's license at 17. And I was driving it to high school. And I met Brenda, who's now my wife. We've been married for 25 years. We met 32 years ago in high school. And we went on our very first date in that Willys Pickup. So we were driving Willys Pickup. It was a beautiful day, and I picked her up in this hot rod, and that was my car, and that's what I drove to school. And so I had the truck in my life for a few years, and then eventually we were gonna get married. And so we decided we're gonna get married and buy a house. I need to earn some money. I need to raise some money, buy a house, and then raise a family. So I sold a couple of cars, and a Willys truck being one of them. And it was on a magazine cover, and it won awards, and it was like a pretty known vehicle. Even though it was built by a 14-year-old, it was a pretty known car, and it had lots of quirks. As all hot rods have some quirks, this one had a lot of quirks. So I sold it to a local guy who owned it for a few years, and then eventually he sold it, and I kind of lost track of it. It was gone. So it was gone like 25 years, I think. Yeah, it was gone 25 years. And I was contacted by a woman in Pennsylvania, and she said that her husband recently passed away, but he was the current owner of the Willys truck. And he instructed her, once he's gone, to find Rob Ida, he'll buy it.
That's awesome.
So she did.
When did you actually buy it back?
I guess it was about 4 years ago now, I feel like. And I got it back, and it's exactly the same as when I built it. I mean, it looks the same. They maintained it here and there, but they didn't change it at all. It looks the same.
Same motor, same interior, everything?
Yeah, I did the upholstery myself, and it's still in there, and I painted it myself. I think some areas have been repainted, for maintenance or whatever, but it looks the same. And I get in it, and it's like a time machine. I get in there, and I feel like I'm 15 years old again. And so obviously that's a keeper. I'm going to be keeping that one for as long as I can.
When you picked that truck up, though, and you brought it home, what was your wife's reaction?
Well, she couldn't believe the fact that this thing is still around. We have all these memories from like a lifetime ago. Like we were babies. We were driving this thing around at 17 years old. Like we were babies. And now we have kids who are having babies, like a whole lifetime went by, and now it's back. So, we did the first thing we did was we drove it to pick up our family Christmas tree. And so, the thing is tiny. It's a 41. You're jammed up in there, steering wheels up in your chin. And my wife's so sweet. She's like, "Oh, it's so comfortable in here." I'm like, "No, it's not." I know it's not, but I appreciate it. And so we drove it, and we got our family Christmas tree. And once in a while, I'll take it out. I took it to the circuit in Asbury Park last year. I cleaned it up a little bit. I drove it there. That was a lot of fun. I had a great time with that. Mm-hmm.
That's probably on the podcast out of everybody we've interviewed. That's by far the best first car story and how it came back. There's actually, there are a couple other guests where we've had that have found their first cars and actually bought them back, or their family's first Jeep and they've bought them back. But they
become a part of the family. I mean, it's especially when you put that much of yourself into it. If it's one that you purchased and had it for a short time and sold it, you love it. But when you like really put everything you had into like making this thing run and bringing it together, and then having these experiences, like her and I, we drove it not only to high school and on dates, but we took it, like we drove it down to Florida, when we were babies, and we drove it down there, and we did all these different things with it, and it all comes back, like that's just part of it. And
that's part of the memories, the culture, that is super cool.
And when I was in it, when I was building this thing, for me, it was this gigantic undertaking that I'm going to do one step at a time. Like, do I know how to wire a car? Well, I'm 14. I know how to wire a radio, but now I'm going to wire a car, and I'm going to learn how to do it. And I did it, and it still works. So when I think about how much I learned looking back on it, that was a real education. I learned how to deal with adults, and I learned how to deal with earning money and putting something together, taking care of it. Machining, painting, plumbing, wiring, fabrication, welding, design, all these things are a lesson one at a time. And then taking a trip, at that age, to take a trip that, is all the way down the coast in his old car, you got to have your wits about you to get it done and be safe and get there in one piece. Now not get arrested. Like all of these things are factors. And now when I look back, I realize how much I learned from that time. And I've just continued to really hone those skills because I'm still doing the same thing. I'm just trying to do them better. That's all,
I mean, you build some of the, absolute most insane hot rods that, that has graced this God's green earth. Right.
Thanks.
But you've done some cool classic 4-wheel drives. I know you did a 57 Suburban, which was, I guess you call it a resto mod or like a modern classic. I don't know how you explain it, but walk us through that build because that involved putting together a 57 Suburban and a modern Tahoe chassis, I think. So kind of walk us through that client build. That is pretty neat. That was
a different project for us. We had a customer who, unfortunately, his wife had MS and she was no longer to get in and out of his cars. So he had a nice car collection, but they weren't really using them anymore because of her disability. But they missed that. They missed going to car events and seeing their friends and, doing things that we get to enjoy in the car culture. And it's not always about the car. It's a lot about the people and the culture. So he said, I need to build something that she can be comfortable in. She could be safe. She can transfer from the wheelchair into the vehicle, and it cannot break down. One of the big challenges with a hot rod is that, well, you might not get home in one piece. There might be a flatbed, maybe. I might be under the car on the side of the road with wrenches and a rock. Who knows? But he can't have that because with her condition, she needs to be able to get home reliably. So we thought about how we're going to do this. And, these days you can buy LS engines that are so put together and engineered well. But in the end, you're still kind of piecing together a lot of things that could fail. And we said, well, what if we just kind of reskin a new truck? Because that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for the reliability of a new Tahoe, which he happened to own. He happened to own this late model Tahoe that he loved. So I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to hand the keys over to your Tahoe and you're going to go buy a new vehicle for every day. And we're going to take this Tahoe and we're going to strip the body off it and adapt this 57 body on it. And I'm not talking about just the frame rails. I'm talking about a complete running vehicle. So imagine if you took a Tahoe, skinned the body off, but left the dashboard, left the seats, the floor pan, all the wiring, brake lines. We didn't even crack a brake line. 2-zone climate control. All these things are still intact. Everything is there. Runs and drives with seats, but no body. And then we do the opposite on the 57 and we kind of carve that body off the old carcass and we made the two together. So what we had was a wider wheel track and a little bit different of a wheelbase, which wasn't much. I think it was about an inch or something. So we adjusted the body. We made kind of a wide body package that was integrated nicely into the body. It didn't look like an add-on. It looked like it was made that way. So we restyled the body to fit that wheel track. And now we have a 4-wheel drive, completely bulletproof truck, or as bulletproof as a new Tahoe is, and you could drive this 57 into the dealer and they could plug into it and, do all the diagnostics and you could buy brake pads and do everything that you need to do right at the dealership. And it was a great project.
Cool going down the road in a 57 awesome. Suburban. Yeah. Now, where did you source the 57 Suburban body? Because those things are not easy to find.
No, they're not. He found the body. And I think he found it on eBay or something. And it was from somewhere out west. And he shipped it to us like that. And it was a nice body to work with. And we made one-piece side windows. The passenger door, so her door opened conventionally, but then we made a door behind it that opened suicide. So the entire side of the truck was wide open. Mm-hmm. And her seat then was able to power out, come down to the height of the wheelchair so she could transfer from the wheelchair into the passenger seat easily. Then it powers her back in, locks it down. Then the back of the truck opened up and lifted the wheelchair and parked it into a position in the back of the truck, and the tailgate came down and it locked it in place. And it was all hands-free. So it was really integrated nicely into the truck. So there was no monkeying around. You didn't have to lift the wheelchair. It was all taken care of. Nice and seamless operation. It was a very cool project. We made a billet version of the Cameo 57 Cameo truck wheel. So it looked like those hubcaps. We made it into a wheel, and it was done, really tastefully and cool. We painted it steel city gray, which is kind of a greenish gray metallic color. And awesome truck, awesome project. And I would,
with those suicide doors though, what'd you do with the B pillar?
The B pillar was now attached to the rear door.
Oh, okay.
So you would open the main door first, and then the pillar would come out with the door. So now it's wide open. And then when you close the suicide door, there's the latch post to close the front door into.
Wow. Yeah. Now that's some serious design and fabrication.
Yeah, that is. And so Bob Cuneo is a fabricator that we work with, and he engineered that system to work. So it was it was wide open, and the whole thing really worked out so well because she was able to get in and feel safe and secure, because it was just so smooth and so nice. But yeah, having the whole side of that truck open was really slick. It was neat.
Now, is that just the passenger side did that, or did the driver's side do it also?
No, just the passenger side. Yeah.
That's wild, man. That's a
I'm doing
pretty
something
cool
similar
build.
now in the shop. It's a 70 Mercedes 600 Pullman limousine, if that means anything to you. So
that's a no joke. I mean, that car untouched original is not an inexpensive vehicle. What does Rob Ida do when he gets his hands on this? Is the real question.
So this was, I'm told this was owned by the dictator of Romania. Mm-hmm. And so now the car's here in the States. And, it's an intimidating looking vehicle. When you see this thing, you figure there's a dictator that's, about to step out. It looks that way. And what we're going to do with it, right? When it came to me, it was kind of set up for, the dictator sat in the back seat, and then his staff sat in the row in front of him, but everybody was faced forward. So it was real, business. It was all business. When he looked at this thing, it was serious. The current owner wants to have more of a luxurious interior where him and his guests can face each other and have a conversation and, be comfortable like you would be in a party limousine, not going to a serious meeting. So we are redesigning the entire interior and also adding a suicide door because it's a 6-door limousine. So all doors open from the front, conventional. So we're going to make the rear door a suicide, and then the second door will open conventionally. So the entire center of the vehicle will be wide open. So you can enter and exit easily, without having to climb over seats or anything like that. So we're about to do that project now. It's in my shop. It's slammed down on the ground. We've scanned the entire interior digitally, and we're engineering a new interior with automated parts. So there'll be like a table that comes down from the ceiling and, moving seats and all these kind of things that'll be engineered on CAD, which we're doing in-house with Reversion Raceworks, where we can do CAD design work, 3D printing, so we can manufacture all these parts in-house, whether it's machined or printed or fabricated by hand. All of these things happen now on CAD first.
That is super cool. Now, at what point are you going to just drop this thing and meld this Mercedes-Benz Pullman body onto a G63 AMG chassis, right?
We talked about it. We talked about that as an option. But I don't think we're going to cut the car up quite that much. So I think we're going to leave it on the chassis that it's on.
That is super cool, man. I mean, there are, talking about your builds. It's interesting with classic four-wheel drive enthusiasts. Classic four-wheel drive enthusiasts always have a soft spot for VWs. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of great VW collectors out there that also collect classic four-wheel drives, like our common friend who Grayson McGill who has probably one of the craziest VW bus collections out there, is also like a huge Jeep guy. Loves scramblers, CJ5s, CJ7s. And you just built a panel VW bus for the Del Ponte family, which I was very fortunate to put eyes on. And I'm going to give our listeners a little background. There's a local family, also Jersey Shore guys like Rob and I, who actually the town in between where Rob lives and where I live is Bradley Beach, New Jersey. And the Del Ponte family own like a corner of a block. They have Del Ponte's restaurant, the bakery right on the corner. Then they have the cafe and gelato, on right up Main a little bit. So they love cars. They're big into cars. They have, a massive collection, and you built them a panel VW bus for the bakery. Like, where did this idea come from, and how did it come to fruition?
Well, finding a panel bus, in itself is not easy, right? They're getting hard to come by, especially one that's not all bashed up. This thing is pretty nice. So I purchased that bus first, and I was putting it together for my daughter, who's a baker. And she was thinking that she wanted to, start her own brand, and she was going to build this brand of cupcakes and custom cakes. And then she went to work for the Del Pontes. And because the Del Pontes are friends of ours, but they're also our favorite bakery, right? So when we think of bakery, we think of Del Pontes. So
by the way, they're everybody's favorite bakery. I'll be the first one to admit I have a little problem. They make these almond paste cookies that are filled with cannoli cream, and the edges are dipped in chocolate. I don't want to admit it, but I will admit it. I eat them weekly. They're insane.
Well, that place is a problem because I go to their pizza place and I just can't stop eating the pizza because Pasquale does that coal-fired pizza, which is fantastic. And then after that, you have to go over to Vinny's bakery and get dessert and, finish it off with a cappuccino next door. But those guys are amazing. So they've been customers of mine for a long time. And I'm building them a 57 Cadillac right now. That's just over the top. It's in the shop. It's over the top. But anyway, I had that bus, and so she started working for the Del Pontes. And then we realized, the Del Pontes really need this bus because it would look so good out in front of their store, because they have just like such a classic Italian looking, corner on Bradley Beach, and that those neon lights and everything that they have would be the perfect backdrop for this bus. So at the time it was painted, it was blue and white already. And then we just needed to get their artwork on there. So we worked with Hot Rod Jen, and we designed, a good logo for that not only fit the brand, but fit the bus. And she hand painted it on there. And one thing that really surprised me about that, because Pasquale, he's got an unbelievable collection of cars. Oh, yeah. And I couldn't believe how much he was driving the VW bus. He's like, I'm driving it all the time. I love it. I'm like, really? I'm like, with all these cars you own, really, you love driving the bus? He goes, yeah. He goes, there's something about it. And he was never an air-cooled guy. Like, he was never really into early Porsches or VWs or anything. Vinny was. Vinny had, kind of a history with air-cooled stuff, so he wanted it. But Pasquale, he really had no interest in it. And then once he got it, he was like, oh, this is like, it's a lot of fun. Because I can't explain it, but it's a lot of fun. So I was happy to see that he drives it a lot. And in a nice weather, you see that in front of the bakery. But
I didn't know this thing existed until, because nobody had posted it on social media or anything. It wasn't out there. Yeah. It was before you had posted it, before Hot Rod Jen had posted it. And I, of course, was getting my craving with my almond paste cookies. Could only fill the almond paste cookies one night. And they had it parked right outside the restaurant, actually, not the bakery. And I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, this thing is impeccable. Like who built this thing? Right. Because we're all local. We all kind of know each other in the end. You're like, and you can't build something like that without somebody knowing about it. Right. Yeah, right. Especially with the Del Pontes, we use a lot of the, are the guys that do some of our interiors on our collection are the same guys that do my interiors. Right. So I see their stuff. They see my stuff at the interior shop, at the upholstery shops, and stuff. And I'm like, where did this thing come from? And I get close, and I look at like the the graphics on the side, which I think at the time graphics, right? Because they're that impeccable. And I touch it and I realize this is hand painted.
Yeah.
Wow. This is like, and Rob, I'll give you, I mean, the build is amazing. Don't get me wrong. The build is impeccable. It's amazing. But the real showstopper for that is by far the hand painted logo on the side.
Sure, yeah,
I mean, Hot Rod Jen is, I mean, she is talented in her own right, but on that specific build, it wasn't small.
Yeah.
And it was big. It was pretty impeccable.
There's a lot of thought that goes into that. So all four of us got together on, designing that thing. We knew that it had to look right because it could go really bad, Yeah. And that bus was just like the perfect blank canvas. It's just, just screaming for the right artwork. So you have to really deliver. And Hot Rod Jen, I don't know how well you know Hot Rod Jen. She's out.
I don't at all. I just follow her on Instagram, and I know that she's also Jersey born and bred too. From
the Jersey Shore. She's from Asbury, and so that's like her scene. She knows all of them. So we knew that it had to be Jen. It had to do it. And so she came in, and she spent 3 days here at my place, and got the job. Maybe even 4 days, but got the job done. But yeah, I mean, every brush stroke is perfect. It's fantastic.
I didn't realize that you had that built beforehand, before the Del Pontes got involved. So you had it built. It was ready. It was turnkey. It was, at the normal level of Ida Concepts builds. I mean, absolutely impeccable. Every nut and bolt was done. And that's when they came in afterwards.
Yeah. Yep.
Gotcha. That is pretty cool. Anybody out there that's listening can check it out on Rob's Instagram, Rob_Ida, or also Hot Rod Jen's Instagram. I think it's also just her handle's at Hot Rod Jen. Both of them have posted up there. It's absolutely insane. You mentioned something earlier. I talked about Asbury Park Circuit. You mentioned Circuit, and on the Classic 4x4 podcast, we talk a lot about community and culture. And there's a lot of deep culture here in the Jersey Shore. Jersey Shore car and truck culture is alive and well. And over the past couple of years, you actually you and your crew brought back I don't want to call it a show because it's not a show. I don't want to call it a meet because it's not a meet. It's not like a cars and coffee. It's just literally a group of like-minded individuals that absolutely love cars and trucks and love the culture around it. And it has a lot of history behind it. And it's called the Asbury Park Circuit. And this was something that was done in car and truck culture, embraced car and truck culture in the 50s and 60s and the 70s. And it kind of went away for a while. And you and your crew brought this back about 2 years ago. So every Thursday night in Asbury Park, right on Kingsley, where it was, decades before, there is this group of amazing people. And I got to tell you, it's not just like hot rodders. It's not just like classic 4-wheel drive. It's not VW enthusiasts. It's everybody comes together. You can have, a worked up hot rod 41 Willys next to my Defender 110, next to another guy's slammed panel delivery van, next to a square body, next to a VW bus, next to a Bug. I mean, it's just everybody coming together. And so how did you end up? I guess first off, what's the history behind Asbury Park Circuit? And then at what point were you like a couple of years ago, we're bringing this back?
Well, there are a couple of guys that are still around. Joe Ersbridge and Ray Slocum and a couple of guys like that created the circuit back in the 50s. Their car club, Hall and Gents, was a car club that I guess was started maybe in the early 50s or mid 50s. And they had some serious cars, and they were in magazines. I have copies of these magazines, and they would have the cars photographed in Asbury Park. They would hang out on Cookman or on Ocean Ave. But the reason why the circuit started, there was this big shipwreck. It was called the Morrow Castle. Yeah. And this gigantic ship went on fire and crashed right by Convention Hall. So right from the Atlantic Ocean up by this Convention Hall onto the beach, this gigantic ship was on fire. And I believe this happened in the 30s. When this happened, Cookman became flooded with tourists, people coming to see the shipwreck. So there was so much traffic on Ocean Avenue that instead of a 2-lane, they made it two lanes in one direction. Mm-hmm. So it was one way, 2 lanes, perfect drag strip, right? So Ocean, 2 lanes going north, and then you'd make a turn, and then they do Kingsley, 2 lanes heading south. So they're running parallel to each other, 2 lanes every way. So people would drag race from stoplight to stoplight, and everybody went there to race their cars, and it became the place to be. And so it started in the 50s, and it grew in the 60s and 70s were just madness from what I'm told. I wasn't there, but I hear stories from these guys. I see a few pictures, but not much. I haven't really seen that many pictures. But I hear these wild stories. There was a custom car show, indoor car show in the convention hall. And I understand that they had cars on 2 levels. So they would put cars in the service elevator, bring the cars to the top level. And there would be cars on display on top and on the bottom, lots of wild motorcycles and choppers. And it was a real scene. And
this was always on Thursday nights, or was it just every night?
This was any time, right? Mm-hmm. And so the car show happened once a year, but the circuit was whenever people wanted to be there, which in my mind is how it should be now. Yeah. So the reason it became Thursday nights is because I started to run the Asbury Park Circuit Instagram page. So I would put up photographs that I would take, or we have a few friends that are always contributing photographs. They're fantastic. And every time
we got to take a step back there. A few friends. I mean, these are iconic photographers, by the way. These aren't just like a couple people that with a camera. Like these are. Yeah. These are like of the level of Danny Clinch, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's
those of you that don't know who Danny Clinch is, he is like the most iconic music photographer out there. He was the touring photographer for Pearl Jam for decades. And if there's one picture that I guess everybody on this earth has seen, probably doesn't realize is a Danny Clinch photo. It's the Tupac black and white.
Yeah.
So if anybody has seen the black and white Tupac photo, that is just, it's legendary. It's iconic. If you live on this earth, you've seen it. That is Danny Clinch's photo. I mean, he just did Bruce's, for the Bruce tour that's going on right now, all the photos for that, and also has photoed my favorite brand, the Ava Brothers, right? Yeah. But this isn't just regular photographers. This is pretty serious, heavy players, right?
So Danny has his store, his studio there is right on the circuit. It's right on Kingsley. So we're parked right in front of his place. So you can go in there on a Thursday night or anytime and see a lot of these photographs that you're talking about. You could buy them, they're for sale. And so he's there, and we have, just unlimited content. And I don't want to list the photographers' names because I don't want to forget any and leave anyone out. But if you go on the circuit page, you'll see all of their work and are tagged on them. But when people would see these pictures come up, they'd be like, oh, but I didn't know it was going to happen. So when is it? And I keep saying it's 24/7. It's anytime you want to be in Asbury Park with your car. That's when the circuit is. It's not one particular time. It's kind of just a destination to go anytime you want. Grab a bunch of friends and meet up with them and get some pizza or whatever. But it seems like people really want to hear a time and a spot. So we say now Thursday nights when the weather is nice, show up. But really show up anytime, anytime you want to get a group together. Asbury is a great place to go to enjoy your cars. Tons of photo ops. So if you want to take a picture of your car and post it on social media, that's the place to do it. There's great lighting and there's great backdrops and lots of action, but there are, outdoor cafes and there's bars and there's live music everywhere. So it's just a great place to go. So you want to jump on your bike or in your car or your truck, go to Asbury. It's a great spot. So that's kind of what I was really hoping we would push is 24/7 car destination. Mm-hmm. But now we are focused on Thursday nights because it seems like that's, it's good to have one time where people can really just, get the most for their trip if they're going to be driving far away. But Tom Parks is a local guy. And he was on the circuit back in the day in the 70s and 80s. He kind of grew up on the circuit. And Tom knows everyone, and he knows the history of everyone's cars, and he's got great stories, and he was there. And there's one magazine article that was in Hot Rod or in Carcraft magazine back in, like, I want to say about 1982. And they covered the circuit. And there's a great photograph of Tom. He was a baby at the time, getting arrested. So there's a picture of him. His hands are behind his back, and there's a cop, and the cop's got a smile on his face. So I always thought this is a made up picture. It was a fun, a fun posed picture for the magazine. But Tom's like, no, it wasn't that at all. I was actually getting arrested. So he said the cops came and they were trying to clear out, because people were racing, doing burnouts and causing hell. So they were trying to clear out some of the crowd. So they grabbed Tom and they put him in handcuffs. They didn't arrest him. They didn't, charge him with anything, but they just were trying to get people out of there. But it made a great picture. So Tom is there every Thursday when the circuit's going on, and you can't miss him. He's a big, tall guy, and he's greeting people and helping people find parking spots and kind of, just making sure he's keeping law and order. We don't want to see people doing burnouts, because if that happens, it's going to ruin it for all of us.
Of course. We're
trying to, the cops have been really, really cool with us. They have not been giving us a hard time at all. And we want to keep it that way. They like seeing the scene. As long as the scene remains civilized, we're not going to have a problem. If we start making jerks of ourselves, they're going to kick us out. So,
but everybody respects it. I mean, I've been going every Thursday night in the summer for the past 2 years. And that's what amazes me the most about the Asbury Park Circuit is not only the history, right? The fact that, it was this thing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Then it just, got abandoned as Asbury Park kind of turned in the 80s and 90s. And you brought this back. It was the epicenter of Jersey Shore car and truck culture. You brought it back. And now, even last year, it's not like it started out small. Like, it just, people started coming, and it's a good amount of people, and it's people from all walks of life. That's what with different types of vehicles. Like I said earlier, I mean, you can have the VW bus next to the bagged delivery van next to, your 1941 Willys, pickup truck. And that's what's amazing is it just brings all these different enthusiasts from all walks of life together into one place. And it's just this fun, peaceful, and you do have some pretty iconic photographers that are coming out of nowhere. Obviously, not everybody is at a Danny Clinch level, but I will say Connie is up there in my book, just because she loves my bulldog, my French bulldog Carl. And she's always taking pictures of Carl in my cars, which she always gets a little soft spot in my heart.
Yeah. Well, Steve Starassi, he's pretty amazing. And Rick Miranda, he's amazing. Paul Domboski. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are really
just talented, absolutely talented. And you get these people that just like they're part of the culture, and it's not about their prominence or their presence. It's just we're here to have fun.
Well, it's the attitude, and there is definitely something in Asbury Park. I mean, if you're listening from across the country and you don't know what Asbury is, it's known for the Stone Pony, and Bruce kind of started his career there, and there's a long history of music and art and culture, but there's this something in the air in that town. It just something magical in that air. It sounds weird, but when you go there, there's just like this feeling of like cool and calm, and everybody's like happy, and that's what I love about the way the cars look and feel there compared to somewhere else. If they're in a parking lot cruise night, it's different. If they're in a car show, it's different. If they're at a Concours event, it feels different. There's something special about having cars there in Asbury Park on the circuit that I don't feel. And I've been to events everywhere. I've been to events around the world, competed in all different types of races and car shows and car events. There is something unique about that. And people say it all the time. They're not like, oh man, the quality of car tonight is fantastic. What I hear is everybody's attitude is so good here. Like everybody feels welcome, and people are kind of surprised, I think, because you're welcome. The only qualification is bring a car that you love. That's it. And I've had people contact me and say, I'm hoping that my car's nice enough next year. I'll try to bring it. Like, it's nice enough now. If you love your car, that's all it takes. Like, that's it. There's no entry fee here. There's no judges. There's no trophies. There's no being judged. You're just going to come and enjoy it. So we started doing like special nights where we'll say, hey, next week is van night, and it's not that everybody else is excluded and it's only for vans. It just means if you have a van, get it out that night. That's all, bring that one. And so we did that last year, and all of a sudden there was like, I don't know, 30 custom vans or maybe more. I don't know. But we're talking about vans that probably haven't been there in a long time, maybe 40 years. And, hippie vans and cool stuff, modern builds, early things. I mean, the whole range. So now we're kind of doing that every week where we're going to say, hey, it's, Pontiac night. And then all of a sudden you're going to see some rare Pontiac show up. But there's been some amazing cars there, like really rare, special stuff, award-winning cars that you've seen in magazines. And these cars are just showing up on a Thursday night. It's just amazing.
And they come from far and wide too. This isn't just like, Jersey guys like you and I that are like, I live, you're in the town, I'm 2 towns south. Like, there are people coming from other states that they want to feel trailers, that vibe.
Cars coming on trailers and stuff and to hang out for 3 hours, and that's it. And everybody loves it. It's great.
It's sort of amazing. And it's like you said, like there's no, the feeling, it's just a vibe is the only way to explain it. Like you said, nobody's getting judged. No. You just park your car, you leave it open, you let people go in it. And like, you just walk around and yuck it up and talk to all these different people. And it's just fun, man. And it just has a vibe. And that's really the only way to explain it. So, and I hope everyone out there finds some time to come to Asbury Park, New Jersey on a nice Thursday in the summer and experience it. Yeah. I'm not I don't do cars and coffees. I don't do shows. Like that's just not it's never been my thing. But every Thursday night after dinner, my wife and I head over to the warehouse. We pick up one of the trucks and we head up to Asbury, park it, walk around with our little French bulldog, Carl, and just enjoy the night. I mean, it also is kind of nice that you're literally a block off the beach, which is pretty cool. Yeah. But
and like the sunsets are amazing. You're on Kingsley and then the sun is going down and the sky is like red. I mean, it's amazing. So we're having a lot of fun with that. And there's no need for it to have any expectations. It doesn't have to grow to a certain size or earn money or anything. It doesn't have to do that because it's just an attitude. It's not a business. It's just come and enjoy it. It's for everyone.
And I love that. It's just an attitude. It's just an attitude with a great vibe. And that's exactly what it is. And I wish there was more of it out there. I've never seen anybody else pull off what you pulled off and bring this back. And, but I appreciate that. I'm so thankful because it's something I love being a part of too. So,
well, it's for all of us. So I'm not trying to take any more credit. I just want to participate like everybody else, And so if you bring a group of friends and I bring a group of friends, that's how it grows. That's all it ever was. So we we started out by going to Del Ponte's for pizza first. We would drive our hot rods over there. We don't get pizza. There'd be 6 or 8 of us, and then drive over to the circuit. Now it's a little more difficult to do that because parking over in Bradley is really hard for that amount of cars. It's impossible.
And it's a lot more than 6 or 8. I mean, it's a few hundred.
Now it's hundreds of cars. Yeah.
So that's really cool, Rob. I can't thank you enough for your time that you spent with us today. And not only talking about your amazing builds, we're absolutely enamored to have somebody of your caliber on the Classic 4x4 podcast, but really appreciated to talk about the Asbury Park Circuit. For all of you out there that don't follow the Asbury Park Circuit on Instagram, you have to. The handle is Asbury Park Circuit. Check it out. There's tons of cars. If you're in the area, if you want to make a trip, you have a reason to come to Asbury Park on a Thursday night in the summer, which don't get me wrong, there's a ton of reasons. There's a ton of great shows this year at the Stone Pony. We have See Her Now, which is like a 50,000 person festival on the beach, which is actually one of the co-founders is Danny Clinch. You know, we have that. So
How about Foo Fighters coming? Foo Fighters,
and who else? And the Killers are the headliners this year. Yep.
Beach Boys will be there. Sheryl Crow. I mean, the list is
Nathaniel Rateliff and Nathaniel Rateliff. I mean, a couple years ago, we had Pearl Jam and Avett Brothers. Last year we had
Green Day
and Smashing Pumpkins last year. I mean,
Stevie Nicks.
It's a no joke festival.
Yeah, Stevie Nicks was there. Billy Idol.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I mean, there's anybody there, but it's a massive festival, so there's more than enough reasons to come to Asbury Park.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Everybody out there, you got to make that trip, come in town, especially on a Thursday, and hit up the circuit and feel the attitude and the vibe, because it's like nothing you've ever felt before with culture, with this car and truck culture. But hey, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to crossing paths with you soon, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it very much.
I'm absolutely honored to have a legend like Rob Ida on the show. Hopefully I get to see that 57 Suburban project where he surgically mounted the body of the 57 Suburban onto a modern Tahoe chassis. That sounds pretty cool. Also, if you find yourself near Asbury Park, New Jersey on a Thursday evening in the summer, make sure you stop by and check out the Asbury Park Circuit. But stay tuned for our next episode where I discuss the good, bad, and the ugly of suspension lifts, lighting, tires, and winch 4x4 modifications with Mike Cashman and Travis LeBron from Mount Zion Off-Road.